Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that changed the course of my life. You can't run a powerful life on an exhausted mind. Most people try to keep their lives running on a battery that's flashing red. They're overwhelmed, overstimulated, overworked, and they wonder why their creativity is gone, why their motivation has dried up, why the spark they used to have now feels like a burden they carry. Let me offer you a better way. Recharge your mind. The same way your phone needs to be plugged in, your mind needs a source, a renewal station. What you put in your head determines what comes out of your life. Garbage in, garbage out, inspiration in, inspiration out. Have you ever noticed how drained you feel after spending hours scrolling through nonsense? But one good book, one wise conversation, one walk in the quiet, and suddenly clarity shows up like an old friend. See, recharging isn't passive, it's strategic. You've got to choose to refill the tank before you hit empty. Take some time every day to think, not just react. Sit down with a journal and meet with your own thoughts. Read a few pages from something rich. Listen to someone who makes you better, not bitter. Don't just rest your body, rest your mind. Give it time to be still. Give it new ideas. Let it breathe. Because when the mind is strong, everything else follows. Your goals sharpen, your words become wiser, your habits improve, your relationships deepen. You stop living on autopilot and start living on purpose. And here's the reward. When your mind is recharged, life becomes lighter. You find yourself with energy again, not from coffee, but from clarity. You start seeing possibilities, not problems. You start responding instead of reacting. You start leading instead of lagging behind. So tonight, don't just rest your body, ask yourself, what did I feed my mind today? If the answer is nothing of value, then don't be surprised if your results feel empty tomorrow. Recharge your mind, friends, daily, deliberately, and deeply. Because a well-charged mind builds a well-lived life, the mind is a battery, not a machine. This concept challenges how most people view their mental capacity and energy. When we think of a machine, we imagine something built to run continuously with only minor maintenance. Machines are expected to perform day in and day out with predictable output, and if something breaks, we fix the part and keep going. But a battery is different. A battery needs to be recharged. It stores energy, expends it over time, and eventually, when it's drained, it can't function until it's recharged. The mind functions more like a battery than a machine. It can run brilliantly when full, but when drained, it malfunctions, slows down, or shuts down entirely. We live in a world that treats mental output like mechanical output. We're expected to work long hours, push through fatigue, solve complex problems, and keep producing, regardless of how mentally tired we are. People say things like power through it or just keep grinding, as if the mind were an engine that simply needs more fuel. But mental energy doesn't work like that. The fuel of the mind isn't just food or caffeine. It's rest, clarity, space, inspiration, and stimulation from positive sources. Without those, the battery of the mind weakens. A battery begins fully charged. Over time, with use, it loses charge. The more intense the output, the faster the drain. The mind follows the same pattern. When you begin your day, your mind is capable of handling decisions, solving problems, and navigating the day with sharpness. But as the day progresses, that mental battery depletes. Every decision, every conversation, every task pulls from the reserves. And unless you stop to recharge, you're operating on less and less power. The real danger is when people keep pushing with a drained battery. That's when mistakes happen. That's when you start forgetting things, losing patience, making emotional choices instead of wise ones. A drained mind doesn't see clearly. It reacts, it overthinks, it panics. People with low mental batteries often feel overwhelmed, not because the situation is truly impossible, but because their capacity is too low to handle it. A charged mind sees options. A drained mind only sees obstacles. And just like a battery, the way you recharge matters. Not every activity restores your mental battery. Scrolling endlessly on social media doesn't recharge the mind. In fact, it often drains it more by overstimulating and distracting it. Watching hours of television or staying busy with shallow tasks doesn't recharge the mind either. True mental recharging requires intentional practices, solitude, reflection, reading, nature, silence, deep conversation, or even doing nothing for a while. These allow your thoughts to settle, your emotions to process, and your creativity to regenerate. Think about how your phone operates. When the battery drops below 20%, it gives you a warning. Performance starts to slow down. If you ignore the warning and keep using it, it eventually dies. The mind gives similar warnings: fatigue, forgetfulness, irritability, anxiety, or a feeling of being mentally foggy. These are the brain's ways of saying, "I need a recharge," yet many people ignore these signs and keep pushing. That's like ignoring your phone's battery warning and expecting it to keep working as if it were fully charged. The truth is, no one thinks clearly with a drained mind. No one creates wisely when they're mentally depleted. The best ideas come when the battery is full. The best conversations happen when the mind is refreshed. The best decisions are made when your mental state is calm and clear. That's why high performers understand the value of recovery. They schedule downtime. They guard their mental energy. They learn what restores them and make it a priority, because they know that if the battery dies, nothing else works properly. There's another lesson here. Batteries don't recharge instantly. Plug your phone in, and it takes time to reach 100%. The same goes for the mind. A few minutes of rest helps, but a true recharge often requires hours or even days. This is why weekends, vacations, daily breaks, and sleep are so essential. You're not lazy for resting. You're recharging your power source. You're preparing to run at full strength again. Rest is not a reward for working hard. It's a responsibility to ensure the work you do is quality. This idea also shifts how we handle stress. When your battery is low, even small stresses feel like major problems. You feel like you're drowning in responsibilities. But with a recharged mind, those same problems feel manageable. It's not the problems that change, it's your mental battery level. That's the power of recharging. It gives you perspective. It resets your emotional balance. It allows you to respond instead of react. A full battery helps you think clearly, work efficiently, and engage positively with others. People who understand that the mind is a battery also learn to protect their energy. They are careful about what they give their attention to. They avoid toxic conversations, unproductive arguments, and meaningless distractions because they know those things drain the battery. They invest in meaningful learning, healthy habits, and uplifting company because those things restore the charge. Every choice becomes a calculation. Is this draining me or charging me? Even inspiration works like a charge. When you hear something motivating, read something powerful, or spend time with someone who lifts your thinking, your mind lights up again. Ideas return, hope returns, focus returns. That's the power of feeding the mind. Just like a battery plugged into the right source charges quickly, the mind thrives when connected to good input. The biggest mistake is treating your mind like it's supposed to run at 100% all the time. That's not realistic. That's not human. You're not a machine. You're not built to keep going without pause. You're built to reflect, to rest, to renew. You're built to recharge. The people who learn this live longer, create deeper, and perform better. They don't break down in the middle of life. They bounce back stronger because they learned the rhythm of recharging. So stop pushing like you're made of steel. Start protecting your battery like your life depends on it, because it does. A drained mind can't fulfill its purpose, but a recharged one, that mind can build empires, restore relationships, birth ideas, and shape a destiny. The secret is not to do more, it's to recharge more often. Mental fatigue leads to poor decisions. This simple truth is often ignored in a world that values hustle over health, speed over stillness, and effort over clarity. Mental fatigue isn't just about feeling tired. It's a condition where your cognitive resources have been drained, your emotional stability is weakened, and your thinking becomes cloudy. When the mind is fatigued, your decision-making ability begins to deteriorate. You react instead of respond. You choose shortcuts instead of strategies. You prioritize urgency over importance. The cost isn't just in mistakes, it's in missed opportunities, broken relationships, bad habits, and even dangerous outcomes. Every decision you make throughout the day pulls from a limited supply of mental energy. From what to wear to how to respond to a text message, from handling a meeting to solving a problem, every choice uses a bit of your cognitive bandwidth. When that bandwidth is full, you're sharp, you're calm, you're thoughtful, but when that bandwidth runs low, you start making decisions based on impulse, fear, or convenience. You cut corners, misread people, overreact, or underthink. You stop seeing clearly, and the worst part is, you often don't realize it's happening. Mental fatigue creeps in slowly, like fog rolling over the mind, and suddenly you're in it without knowing how you got there. One of the reasons this is so dangerous is because decision making is cumulative. A poor decision early in the day can lead to a chain reaction. You hit snooze instead of waking up, so you're late. You're late, so you skip breakfast. You skip breakfast, so you're hungry and irritable. You snap at someone at work, and now the atmosphere is tense. You rush a task to catch up and make a mistake. That mistake leads to criticism. Criticism leads to defensiveness. And by the end of the day, you're overwhelmed. Not because the day was too hard, but because one poor decision led to another, and most of it began with mental fatigue. Decision fatigue is real. It's why people like Steve Jobs wore the same clothes every day. It's not about style, it's about saving mental energy. The more decisions you make, the more tired your brain becomes. That's why even successful people simplify their lives wherever possible. They automate routines. They reduce choices. They create habits that remove the need for decision making altogether. Because they understand the price of mental fatigue, they know that even one wrong decision at the wrong time can set them back days, weeks, or even years. When the mind is tired, it defaults to comfort. You choose what's easiest, not what's best. You eat junk food instead of cooking. You say yes when you should say no. You spend money to feel better. You avoid hard conversations. You delay action. You take emotional exits rather than logical paths. These aren't signs of failure. They're signs of fatigue. The brain, like any other part of the body, needs rest. It needs fuel. It needs silence. When denied those things, it starts to protect itself by choosing what feels safe or pleasurable in the moment, even if it's destructive long term. Mental fatigue also affects your emotional regulation. You become more reactive, less patient, more sensitive. You take things personally. You jump to conclusions. You assume intentions. You withdraw from others or lash out. Emotional decisions made under fatigue often lead to regret. You say what you don't mean. You agree to what you can't handle. You break things that take years to rebuild. The momentary release of emotion feels justified in the moment, but in reality, it's the fatigue speaking louder than your values. This is especially true in leadership, parenting, relationships, and business. When the mind is fresh, you lead with wisdom. You listen, observe, weigh options. You show empathy and resolve. But when fatigue sets in, you lead with frustration. You become reactive. You micromanage, you blame, you forget the big picture and get lost in small fires. Relationships begin to suffer because the tired mind lacks the capacity to give attention, patience, and understanding. You start saying, I just can't deal with this right now. Not because the issue is too big, but because your mind is too tired. Mental fatigue also clouds your ability to prioritize. You spend time on what's loud, not on what's important. You respond to what's urgent instead of working on what creates long-term value. Your focus narrows and your ability to think strategically shrinks. Important projects get delayed. Opportunities get overlooked. You spend hours on tasks that produce very little, all because your mind can't process what actually matters. The long-term impact is not just wasted time, it's stagnation, growth slows, creativity dries up. Confidence erodes, and slowly you begin to question your direction, not because it's wrong, but because your tired mind can't see the path clearly anymore. Another tragic consequence of mental fatigue is how it affects your self-perception. You start to believe you're losing your edge. You think you're becoming lazy, undisciplined, or unmotivated, but the truth is, you're just tired. You're trying to make high-quality decisions with a low-quality mind state. And the more you push without rest, the worse it gets. You don't need more willpower. You need more clarity. You don't need more hustle. You need more recovery. Mental fatigue doesn't mean you're broken. It means your battery is low and needs attention. That's why rest, routines, and boundaries are so important. The best thinkers and performers protect their mental energy like a treasure. They understand that their decisions determine their destiny. So they make time to reset. They sleep, they exercise, they meditate, they journal, they read, they guard their inputs. They create buffers in their day to breathe and think. They don't just grind, they reflect. They know that good decisions come from a good mind, and they treat their mind with the respect it deserves. Even the most powerful mind can't make wise choices when it's running on fumes. Mental fatigue blurs the line between right and wrong, good and better, necessary and wasteful. It turns a confident person into a confused one. It takes a clear vision and turns it into a foggy path. That's the cost of poor mental stewardship. But the moment you begin to prioritize mental rest, mental strength returns. The moment you begin to value the recharge, the decisions become clearer, the emotions become calmer, and the direction becomes certain again. Mental fatigue is not a sign of weakness. It's a signal for recovery. It's your mind asking for renewal so it can serve you better. It's the brain's way of telling you that it can't give you quality output if you don't give it quality care. Once you understand that, everything changes. You no longer chase productivity at the cost of peace. You no longer make decisions under pressure that could have waited for clarity. You slow down, you think deeply, you choose wisely, and in doing so, you reclaim your life from the chaos of constant exhaustion. Recharge through input, solitude, and reflection. These are not luxury activities or optional habits for a peaceful life. They are absolute necessities for a powerful one. The mind, much like a battery, must be restored regularly, and that restoration happens not by doing more, but by receiving more depth, more quiet, more perspective. In a world addicted to output and noise, the real transformation begins when we honor the role of stillness, nourishment, and self-inquiry. People try to regain their energy by working harder, going faster, multitasking. But the truth is, the mind recharges best when you stop and let it breathe. Input is the first key. Your mind cannot create ideas from an empty well. It needs inspiration, wisdom, knowledge, and truth poured into it regularly. If you constantly consume low-value noise, shallow content, and meaningless entertainment, don't be surprised if your thoughts feel scattered and your creativity feels dead. What you put in determines what you get out. Input shapes perspective, the kind of books you read, the kind of voices you listen to, the kind of environments you surround yourself with, all of that becomes the material your mind works with. If you want sharper thoughts, you need richer input. You must feed your mind with ideas that challenge you, strengthen you, and provoke growth. Just like a body starved of nutrients becomes weak, a mind starved of rich input becomes dull and reactive. People wait for motivation to strike, not realizing that motivation is often the result of good input entering a quiet space. Then comes solitude. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is chosen silence. It is the act of stepping away from the world, not to escape it, but to understand it. You step back so you can return with strength. In solitude, the noise of life fades and the whispers of truth become clear. It's where your own voice rises above the crowds. Most people are afraid of solitude because they've never been taught how to sit with themselves. But solitude is not a void. It is a mirror. It shows you what's working and what's not. It brings you face to face with the thoughts and emotions that get drowned in constant noise. It lets you breathe in your own soul's voice. The more you practice solitude, the more stable your mind becomes. In that space, stress releases, clarity rises, and the deepest parts of you finally get heard. But solitude alone is not enough. You must also reflect. Reflection is where the pieces come together. It's the quiet examination of your actions, your patterns, your choices, your progress. It's when you ask yourself not just what happened today, but what did I learn from it? It's when you look back not to regret but to realign. Reflection brings intention back into your decisions. Without reflection, you repeat the same mistakes. Without reflection, you chase goals that don't matter. Without reflection, you live reactively rather than consciously. A few minutes of honest reflection can save you months of wandering down the wrong path. It turns experience into wisdom and turns confusion into direction. Input, solitude, and reflection are like water, sunlight, and soil for the mind. Together, they create an environment for growth. Input gives you the knowledge. Solitude gives you the silence. Reflection gives you the understanding. When you practice all three consistently, you don't just recharge, you evolve. You go from being mentally drained to mentally ready. You go from being overwhelmed by life to leading it. It's not about escaping responsibility. It's about strengthening your capacity to handle it. You don't need to disappear for a year to recharge. Sometimes you only need 10 minutes with a good book, 5 minutes of silence before your day starts, or a moment of journaling at night. These are small acts that carry a large return. The key is consistency. Just like a battery recharges gradually, your mind regains its power through regular deposits of quiet, wisdom, and intention. Most people wait until they're burned out to consider reflection. They wait until they're stuck to seek new input. They wait until life collapses before they create solitude, but the wise don't wait. They build these practices into their rhythm so they don't have to recover from collapse. Another beautiful thing happens when you recharge this way. You become more present. Your thoughts slow down. Your emotions stabilize. You start listening better, thinking deeper, and responding with more grace. Life no longer feels like a storm to survive, but a journey to shape. You become more aware of your purpose and more sensitive to the direction you're meant to take. That's what recharging gives you. It's not just about feeling better, it's about seeing clearer. It's not just about resting, it's about rising. This way of recharging also protects you from burnout. Most burnout doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing too much without meaning, without margin, and without renewal. People try to pour from an empty cup and then blame the world for their exhaustion. But once you begin practicing input, solitude, and reflection, you fill that cup regularly. You begin to operate from a full place instead of a desperate one. You begin to give your best instead of what's left. Input, solitude, and reflection also improve the quality of your decisions. When the mind is clear, choices become easier. You don't waste time chasing what doesn't matter. You don't fall into comparison or distraction. You know what's yours to do, and you do it with intention. A recharged mind is more decisive, more creative, and more courageous. It takes action not out of pressure, but from clarity, and that's what changes everything. In every season of life, the most effective people aren't the busiest. They are the most centered. They don't run on panic or pressure. They run on purpose, and that purpose is discovered and sustained through the practice of recharging the mind. They don't fear silence. They seek it. They don't drown in noise. They filter it. They don't run on fumes. They refuel frequently, and because of that, their presence carries strength. Their words carry weight. Their actions create impact. The mind, just like the body, requires care, not just from the outside, but from within. When you build a life that honors input, protects solitude, and welcomes reflection, you become mentally strong in a world that constantly tries to drain you. And from that strength comes focus, peace, direction, and power. Recharging isn't optional if you want to live well. It is the foundation for every wise decision, every strong relationship, and every meaningful achievement.